Hey everyone, thanks for joining me for another episode of Everything Marvel Podcast. It's finally time to discuss Captain Marvel. So I want to start out first and put a few disclaimers out there because there was a lot of, I don't want to call it controversy around this movie, but there were a lot of things going around before it came out with Brie Larson and the cast and a bunch of negativity about, oh, it's too feminist, oh, white men don't go see it, oh, it's about girl power. I'm not interested in any of that. I'm interested in specifically just the movie, how it flows with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, how it fits, how Captain Marvel comes into the story here, because this is pretty much her origin story. Like, she's going to be thrown into this chaos that we have going on after Infinity War. We just really need some information about her. We need some backstory. We need, context to her character. I'm not interested in all this extra stuff, the social justice problems and, girl power. That's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the movie. That's it. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to address it. The negativity from Brie Larson, the negativity. There's this huge thing from, the critics supposedly tried to bomb the movie on Rotten Tomatoes. Like the reviews were just back and forth on it. And there were trolls, trying to derail the movie before it came out. I'm not interested in that. We're not going to dive into any of that. This is not about that. This is about the story of Captain Marvel, the movie of Captain Marvel. So, that being out of the way, the next thing I need to throw out there, spoilers. If you've not seen the movie, you may want to go watch it, come back and watch this later. Anyway, so let's talk numbers. This movie generated huge numbers the first weekend. Opening weekend, $456.7 million. Just opening weekend. That's crazy. Made 61.4 million just on opening day. ComScore reported that 65% of opening weekend audience members were male. Don't make your male fans angry, Brie, because it's a lot of people who were there were male fans. That's all I'm going to say. Disney listed the ratio as 55-45 male female, but yeah, it's debatable. I mean, most of Marvel fans are guys. Maybe that's why they put her at the forefront of this movie, to bring more women in. That's a great idea. Get more girls interested in Marvel, get more people in general interested in Marvel. That's great. And then there was that huge thing with Rotten Tomatoes, which is, if you don't know what Rotten Tomatoes is, it's a review site for movies that come out. And somehow, pre-screenings and everything, these reviews get out before the movie gets out. And so a lot of people go to this site and they say, oh, let me see what Rotten Tomatoes has to say. Sometimes it can be biased. And I think in this time it was biased. One day it was one number, and then the next day it was another number, and they blamed it on trolls, trying to derail the movie. So I don't really like to go by that site, to be honest with you. I don't trust it, just for reasons like that. Post Track reported 84% overall positive reactions from moviegoers. That's great. So the plot, we're gonna kind of hit it really quick here, just for discussion's sake, so we're all on the same page. It was slightly different from the comics after doing a little research, talking to one of my comic buddies, but it wasn't enough to make you angry. You were like, oh, I see why they did that. It fits better into this story that they're building with these movies. It fits better into what we've come to know as the MCU, instead of this, crazy thing they've had to make it work. They were able to fit it in nicely, so to speak. It was basically the same origin we had in mind. She got her power from an energy core explosion. She lost her memory, and the Kree took her. We didn't know this at first. It took, a little ways into the movie for her to realize that she thought the Kree were the good guys, but in reality, the Kree were the bad guys who, kind of, I don't say kidnapped her, but they took her and kind of taught her how to use her powers. She was taught and trained, like I said, that the Skrulls were the enemy. But later on, she learned that the Kree were the ones to kill her good friend, Dr. Wendy Lawson, aka Marvel. That's another thing they changed. In the comics, Marvel was a guy. And so everybody thought that Jude Law, he's in the movie, they thought he was Marvel. But they changed this a little bit, and it's just a minor detail. It doesn't really make any difference whether who Marvel was. The fact changed that Marvel was the Kree who was trying to help the Skrulls regain their, their lives, their a place to live. He was trying to help the Skrull. They were portrayed as the good guys, and the Kree as the bad guys. I don't think anyone in the comic universe really thought about that. But if you take the whole scheme of the Skrulls in the comics, there's nothing that says otherwise. They were just these people, and it was always, the good guys were sent to fight them. They didn't really say, oh, they're bad. Or if they were on a planet, it's because they were ran out of another planet. They were just trying to find somewhere to live. We didn't know that the Skrulls had the Tesseract. We find out towards, the latter half of the movie that they had the Tesseract on a spaceship orbiting Earth, an invisible spaceship, Marvel's spaceship orbiting Earth. The Skrulls were living on it, and they had the Tesseract somehow. And I think the connection is Howard Stark finds it at the end of Captain America, the First Avenger. He finds it in the ocean. He pulls it out. He's working on a project, Project Pegasus. This is the same project that the doctor was working on, Wendy Lawson. So somehow the transfer was made. She got the Tesseract and took it there. The cat eats it. Then later on, the post-credit scenes, the cat spits it out. We don't know when that is. It's not during the snap. At first glance, you think that's during the snap because there was no one around. It was really quiet, but it was just kind of just this thing thrown in. The cat spits it out, and I guess that's when S.H.I.E.L.D. ended up with it. Anyway, we were trying to work on that the other day, me and my buddy, like this trail of the Tesseract, so to speak, and that's kind of what we've come up with. And the whole, in the beginning, she's being, trained to control her powers and harness her powers, and it's really, you can feel it from her that she's being limited. Her powers are being suppressed, and you see this thing in the back of her neck, and you immediately wonder, is this some kind of like a shock collar for a dog? He goes to lash out and it shocks him. It's the same idea, but it just suppresses her. When she starts to get angry, you see that thing light up, it suddenly brings her back down. From the beginning, I was going, that thing's holding her back. If she could get that off, who knows what would happen. Everyone knew that the cat had something to do with the story. Goose was the cat's name, I believe. Ever since the cat showed up in one of the trailers, I don't think it was the first trailer. Maybe it was the end of the first trailer. But anyway, they were like, the cat's got something. And even this strange theory was thrown out. Hey, what if Fury loses his eye in this movie? But I don't think anybody really connected that it was the cat that made Fury lose his eye in this movie. So I thought that was interesting. A lot of people thought he was a Skrull. The cat was a Skrull. And I think they kind of paid homage to that a little bit. When they asked the Skrull guy, they were like, hey, could you turn into a cat? I was like, but then you found out it was actually the alien that could eat things just randomly whenever you needed it to. And then when Fury needed to use it like a weapon, it wouldn't eat things. So that was really funny. It was also really cool to see Agent Coulson back in action. He was digitally de-aged. Originally, I thought, what I was reading online, they had a younger guy playing him and they were superimposing his face. But the more I read, I think it was the original actor of Agent Coulson, and they superimposed his own young, they digitally de-aged him like they did Fury. So I thought that was really cool. He did great. He didn't have a whole lot of screen time, but he had a good bit. And I love the tie-in with the post-credit scene. And I don't want to get into that a whole lot because I'm going to discuss it in we're going to do one more Endgame podcast before Endgame comes out with all the trailers and all the little details and things that people have picked out and pulled out. But the tie-in was just great. It was so, so awesome. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more in a few minutes, but so into my review of the movie, I really, really enjoyed this movie. A lot of people said, oh, it was not good. Oh, it was too slow. I read so many mixed reviews. Like I said, the pre-screenings, I like to just glance through the reviews and see if it's one way positive or one way negative. And I'm going to be honest with you, this one was split kind of 50-50. You would read 2 or 3 that were like, this movie was great, go see it now. And then you would read a couple that were like, this is the most boring movie I've ever seen. Why did they make this? Brie Larson's terrible. Like they were just, it was so split. And so I had no idea what to expect. But I was thoroughly pleased with the movie. I compare it to, say, an Iron Man 1, Captain America 1, because it's a solid origin story. We learned a whole lot about Captain Marvel, about Carol Danvers, about her friends, everything we could learn. We learned enough about her to feel connected to this character without getting bored, without getting bogged down. And I think the problem is that people expected this huge, big, crazy action movie in which there was plenty of action in my mind. There was just plenty of action for me, but they expected this huge thing to, because we're coming off of Infinity War. We're on this slope here, and we just kind of dropped off because Marvel was like, Disney, whoever you want to say, they were like, we need to stick this movie in here now because we can't just have Captain Marvel swoop in here and then we go back and redo her story later and tell everybody, about her later. We need to put her in now. So it was kind of bad timing on their part, but they kind of had to. If they didn't, it would have been this. I hate to compare it to Justice League, but it would have been like that. It would have been like Wonder Woman comes in out of nowhere and is super strong, and then we get a Wonder Woman movie. So they tried to avoid that, but I don't think fans were ready. They were like, we need this big, huge thing. We're ready for Endgame, and we need this. But it went down really quick just for a good origin story. That's what I was expecting, but apparently not everyone was expecting that. It wasn't designed to be a follow up for Infinity War, but again, if you go in expecting that, you're going to be a little disappointed. And I don't think, the argument of they could have put her origin story in earlier. I think that's a bad argument because if they had put her origin story in at any point earlier in the MCU, she would have been so overpowered that there wouldn't have been a need for any other Avengers. Like Ultron, she could have just, boom, she could have just taken him out, which Vision did, but now Vision looks like a pansy. So it's just, she is so powerful. She's kind of up here, and there's this huge debate who's stronger, her or Thor. So I'll leave that debate for another day. We should know more after Endgame. But that being said, they couldn't have put this movie anywhere else. It would have just been weird. I thought Brie did a great job. She's a decent actress. I've seen her. She was in Kong Skull Island. She didn't have a huge part in it, but she did great with that. I've not seen a whole lot of her other movies, so I'm basing it on this. I feel like she played well to Carol Danvers' kind of quirky comic side. She did well with that. I enjoyed the plot twist that the Skrulls being the good guys. It's just the same group of people from the comics, the same alien race, but they kind of put a different twist on it. It made you think, maybe they are the oppressed ones. Maybe they're the ones that need helping, and that's why Captain Marvel's helping them. Rumors were that Tony Stark would show, like a younger version, pre-Iron Man Tony Stark would show, but unfortunately that didn't happen. And that's kind of sad because it would have been a great tie-in. It would have been hilarious. And we also found out how the MCU version of the Avengers Initiative got their name. They were originally going to be the Protectors. If you saw Nick Fury typing on his 1995 Windows machine, he had the little picture of Carol's airplane, and it said Carol Avenger Danvers or something like that. That was her call tag. And so he went, that sounds better. And he backspaced out the Protectors and put in Avengers Initiative, and it just boom. Which, if he was thinking that far ahead, there are a few inconsistencies with that idea because I'm going back and watching a couple movies before Endgame, and I just watched Avengers 1 with my wife. And as he's talking to Thor, he's acting completely oblivious to the idea that there are aliens out there. And I'm like, Fury, you knew back in 95 that there were aliens out there, but you just hadn't seen any more come in since then. Maybe he had tried to push it out of his mind, or this was a different scale. There's a lot of aliens here, and there was just a couple of the Skrulls. Say what you want, but it's a little bit of an inconsistency, Marvel. We see you. We see it. A lot of people think that the MCU character Photon was hinted / introduced in this movie. Photon would have been Monica Rambeau, Carol's best friend Maria's little girl. And I think she even says a little line in there, something, you have to learn to glow and shoot lasers like your auntie or something like that. And people were like, oh my gosh, that's Photon. The little girl grows up and gets kind of the same power. We shall see. I'm going to throw this out there. I have some questions from the movie. These aren't really criticisms, but things I need to know, we're kind of left hanging, and I want to know, in my mind, was this intentional? Did they just not think about this? What powers of Captain Marvel's did we not see? There's so many. If you go back when I did the original Captain Marvel podcast, kind of the preview, talked about the comic side of her, which is, what we had to go off at that point. We didn't even have a trailer hardly at that point. She has so many powers. There's just ridiculous amount of powers. So what other powers will we get to see? What powers did they leave out of this movie intentionally? So that in Endgame, when they're like, we need an ace card, boom, Captain Marvel's got this power. Oh yeah, we didn't talk about that yet, but we're gonna use it now. And so that's on my mind. They can't have played all their cards at this point. It would just be, it would have been dumb, and they're not that dumb. They're smarter than we think. They try and outsmart us, and they do. They put in fake footage into trailers and leave out things intentionally to leave us hanging. They have to save something so that they can beat Thanos. But what could it be? And what was she doing on the other side of the galaxy with the Skrulls all this time? They, she was, supposedly helping the Skrulls find their home or something. And maybe, I was talking to somebody else, maybe they will bring in and do a Captain Marvel 2, and they will go into that in a little more detail. That would be interesting. I'd love to watch that. But I feel like they brought her in just at the right time. Again, they couldn't have done it at any other time, really. It wouldn't have made any sense. How did she absorb the power from the Tesseract? If you think about it, the energy that they were studying in this Project Pegasus, Howard Stark and Doctor were studying was Tesseract energy, right? So in this plane, they had Tesseract core. So in theory, this energy was Tesseract energy. So in theory, she is powered by Tesseract power, if you kind of put that together. So how did she absorb it? How did it not teleport her like it teleported Red Skull? How was she able to absorb it and Marvel not able to? Or, there's just a lot of questions surrounding that. Maybe she was too close to it, and that's why she absorbed it instead of it killing her. I don't know. I'm just things that go through my head, and I want to know more about. Is she stronger than Thor? That's the big question. At the end of the Endgame trailer, Thor and her are kind of not really squaring off, but they're sizing each other up, and that would be a really interesting battle to watch. I don't think we'll ever need to see that battle, but it will be an interesting one to watch. So let's discuss the post-credit scene a little bit. The first one is the important one. The second one is not, like I said, it's not really that important. The remaining Avengers have found the pager miraculously. Don't know how. He was in the middle of some big city and he just dropped it. How did they know where to go to look for it? How did they even know that they needed to look for it? Regardless, maybe we'll get an answer to that. Maybe we won't. Maybe that's just a needle in a haystack. How did they find that pager that he dropped when he disappeared? I don't know. They had no idea what it did, but they knew it had to be important. Somehow they knew about it. Somehow they knew that Fury was counting on that pager. They had thought originally, oh, this isn't working. They were trying to fix it when it turned off. They had all these computers, studying it, maybe trying to boost the signal or something so that it would get out. It reached the other side of the galaxy for crying out loud. It was fine. So, and when it turned off, they thought it was broken. And then she just was standing beside them. Like, how did there were no motion sensors went off or anything? Again, just thinking through random things here. She has no idea what's going on at this point, or does she? Like, she shows up and she's kind of not angry, but she's kind of like intense. Like, where's Fury? So maybe she was on the other side of the galaxy and her Skrull friends just started boop, 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 disappearing, getting snapped. And then her pager goes off and she's like, bing, okay, that's why he's paging me. So it's a very important detail. It's a very important post-credit scene. And I'm going to throw out a couple other things here. Other things that were noticed. In this post-credit scene, it seems to be very soon after the snap. And I'll tell you why. The Avengers here look different than they do in the new trailers. Like, if you think about it, in the newer trailers, Cap has shaved his beard and his hair is shorter, in Infinity War, and he's just got long hair and he's swooping it back, right? This, he shaved his face and he's got the swoop to the side, looking more like, I don't want to say the first Captain America, but he looks more like original Cap, not, post Civil War Cap. And the same thing goes for Black Widow, Natasha. She's still got her short blonde hair. And if you watch the trailers, she's back to her red hair and it's longer. So, and if you think about it, especially the first trailer, Marvel has tried very hard to keep Captain Marvel out of the trailers for Endgame until the movie released. Because the big question on everybody's mind is, when does Captain Marvel show up? How long is she in Endgame? What big of a part? You know, people were thinking anything from she shows up right at the beginning to she comes in right at the end and beats Thanos at the last second. So basing it on this combination of timeline events, it feels like she's there from the very beginning of Endgame. First trailer, you know, there was a group of, I don't know, 4 or 5 people in kind of a V formation, and they edited one person out. My money was on Captain Marvel. That's who I was betting on. They walk out in this field in the middle of the night, and they're kind of looking up to the sky, and I feel like they edited Captain Marvel out, and they're looking up and they're watching Tony and Nebula's spaceship come back into the atmosphere. That's my prediction, and I'm gonna bet on it. I would put money on that prediction. Maybe wrong, but that's kind of what I'm thinking. So overall, I really enjoyed this movie. If you haven't seen it yet, again, don't know why you watched this because I just ruined it for you, but you should still go see it. Don't go in expecting a super, you know, powerful, hyped up movie. This is an origin story. Make no mistake, it's an origin story. They just had to stick it in right here, right after the decimation of Infinity War. But it fits. If you go into it like that, it does fit. I'd like to go see it again, see if I've missed any other details. Um, but Endgame comes out. It's a little over a month, and I'm very excited. Like I said, we will do one more Endgame podcast just to discuss things in the new trailers, the new images that we've gotten thus far. There's a lot to dissect. You don't think about it until you watch it and watch other people talk about it, and you're like, wow, I didn't get that just from this minute and a half video. But there's a lot there. It's so packed full of stuff. And I'll bring it all to you next time. So thank you guys for watching. We'll catch you next time.